Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to do a quick. I always say quick, but I'm going to do a Bible study this morning. Yesterday, I did this privately, and it really affected me because Ezekiel 32 has a description of the fall of empire, which is, by the way, all throughout Ezekiel. But it was talking about God talks about Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and basically slaying him and distributing his meat to all the earth. And it was really talking about empire and what happens when empire falls, which is very, very relevant to us. And it affected me because I was praying the rosary, and I was thinking about it. And there's this long list of, like, basically he says, don't be, these people that terrify the world, that everyone fears, like, for instance, the deep state or whatever. Um, don't be afraid of them, because look at all the other people that I have slain, to God's point of view, that I have put into the ground, who used to terrorize the whole earth. And they lists all the different people that have done that, all the different kingdoms, like Assyria, for instance, which had just been struck down. And it's really interesting because everyone's talking about the Middle East, Iran, and whatnot. And well, if you look at the Middle East, you can kind of see that happening with all these different empires. Well, they're not empires, but they would have been back then. But all these different nations, Iran, Iraq, which is Persia, Babylon, equivalent land areas with capitals and equivalent places. Um, Egypt, it hasn't changed. Everyone knows what Egypt is. And then Israel, and these people, these nations terrorize us. And me, it really affected me because I've made a lot of decisions in my life that kind of puts me opposed to um, the world as it stands. And I'm still going to provide for a family. So it's kind of scary, and I was thinking about my children and what kind of world they'll grow into and what kind of thing I'm giving them. And the thing is I've made all these decisions for moral principles. It's kind of like, I think Israel views itself as fulfilling, as keeping the Bible, the Old Testament, more than their ancestors did. So they want to kill everybody. They want to do a more serious genocide, the way God commanded Joshua to do. But the difference is God, when God talks about that genocide, he the amount of justification we get, which is not, it's not exhaustive. There are other things probably going on that God never touched on, but in Leviticus, it's a list of sexual crimes, and that's the reason God gives for why he commanded a genocide. Essentially, indirectly, he doesn't say it directly, but he says this is what's happening in that land. Don't do that because it would be horrible. And everyone's concerned now with, like, Kabbalistic, ritualistic pedophilia, you know what I mean? And so, well, if you look at those nations, Israel and Palestine, which one of those is known for sexual crimes? You know what I mean? And so it doesn't, they're not trying to genocide the Palestinians for the same reason that God commanded it in the book of Joshua. But anyway, so that's what happened from reading Ezekiel 32 yesterday. And I was encouraged because God said, look, look at all the other people that have terrorized the world, and I've put them in the ground. And, yeah, these are terrifying uh, groups and powers, but they'll pass just like everything else. What hasn't passed is my bloodline. My father, one of my fathers, lived through the medieval age, lived through the Romans, lived through um, ancient biblical times without knowing about Israel or being a part of Israel. There was a man walking around, living, had a wife, he had children, and I came from that. That's why I'm alive today. You know what I mean? So my own bloodline and your bloodline has outlived all of these empires. So it's interesting to think about that, because what does God give us? He gives us everything, but he gives us our bloodline. That's one of the main things. That's actually what most of the Bible is based off of, is the history, a family history, which is what Genesis means. Anyways, and the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, speak. And I wanted to read this, but I started doing this on my own. But I said this is one of the most important chapters in Ezekiel that I reference all the time, that guides me morally. Son of man, speak to the children of thy people, and say to them, when I bring the sword upon the land, if the people of the land take a man, one of their meanest, and make him a watchman over them, And he see the sword coming upon the land, and sound the trumpet, and tell the people. Then he that heareth the sound of the trumpet, whosoever he be, and doth not look to himself if the sword come, and cut him off, his blood shall be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet, and did not look to himself, his blood shall be upon him. But if he look to himself, he shall save his life. And if the watchman see the sword coming, and sound not the trumpet, and the people look not to themselves, and the sword come, and cut off a soul from among them, he indeed is taken away in his iniquity, but I will require his blood at the hand of the watchman. So thou, son of man, I have made thee a watchman to the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word from my mouth, and shalt tell it them from me. When I say to the wicked, O wicked man, thou shalt surely die. If thou dost not speak to warn the wicked man from his way, that wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but I will require his blood at thy hand. But if thou tell the wicked man that he may be converted from his ways, and he be not converted from his way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul. Thou therefore, O son of man, say to the house of Israel, thus you have spoken, saying, our iniquities and our sins are upon us, and we pine away in them. How then can we live? So, very simple principle there. This is a great thing to keep in mind in your life, is that if God has given you knowledge, basically, and the authority to speak, and you don't speak, you can be held accountable for that. This is, by the way, the root of my recent bitterness towards the church on earth, because I, being a new convert, was trying to make decisions for my family, how to raise my family, and I spoke to a huge swath of the church, lay people, lay folk all over the country, from here to the East Coast, and priests, and they all told me, if you want to provide for your family, get a job, get a mortgage, right? That's what they all told me. And that led directly to the death of my son. So I was not warned about the evils of usury. It's a blind spot. And so that's why I'm bitter towards the church. And it's really, and there's many other things, that go into that. But, and it's really, it's a major problem. It's like the traditionalists, Michael Jones has a thing about the Fugger family, that they're concerned with liturgical abuse at a time where the arguments over usury in the church, which was the main problem that's never been resolved, and people are now sending me what that Pope wrote about usury, and it's never really been addressed. He said it's okay for this one thing that the Franciscans are doing to keep doing it, even though they're collecting a 5% interest, because they're not trying to make a profit. They're just trying to cover their expenses. And he doesn't say this, but the loans only lasted 1 year. But so this wasn't resolved, and the Fugger family kept doing usury, and it collapsed the whole Holy Roman Empire. And it led to a huge war. It led to the Civil War as a result, related to the Protestant Reformation. And that had everything to do with money and with usury. That's what Martin Luther was talking about. That's what von Hutten was talking about, was how the gold from Germany was being drained to Rome. That's what the whole indulgence situation was about. It's all about gold, money, the money economy, and usury. And so these things collapse empires. They prevent birth, just the simple magic of charging more money than exists. And that's usury. And so that has affected my family. And the thing is that happened to me. I lost my son and whatnot. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, this is the thing that the church ought to be teaching about. This is the thing that every layperson ought to know about, and nobody teaches about it. And it's a major problem, because it's like 9 to 5 is what matters. All these other issues, abortion, homosexuality, all these things, they're subtle, they're important, but they're all related to usury. We really wouldn't have any of the problems that people think are destroying the world if it weren't for usury. We would have it would be like a bare percentage. The Catholics would still run the world if it wasn't for committing usury. The Roman Curia and the cardinals committing usury in the 16th century, basically. So in the 15th. So that's why this chapter is so relevant. Is we need to be taught on usury. It's the main thing affecting your average person. It's the main thing destroying lives, and it's what leads to all the other moral abuses that people dedicate their whole lives to fighting, like abortion and whatnot. Well, listen to the arguments in favor of abortion. They're all economic. They're all economic. That's how they justify it. So usury, that's really, because basically eugenics and all that is basically an attempt by the usurer to kill off the people who he knows will eventually rebel against him and break out a guillotine and cut off his head, because that's what always happens. What always happens, the more usury collects wealth towards the center of the empire, towards the usurer, the more violent the population gets and the more upset they get. They can't get married, they can't raise families, so you have a large unwedded male population, and that's kind of what we're dealing with right now with my generation, with the Zoomers, and that's one of the major things I'm trying to do is employ people and help them find wives and pay them to have a real life. I was talking to a man today. This is a good example of how there's more virtue outside the Catholic Church than there is in the Catholic Church. I was talking to a man yesterday. It was great. He was talking about how his friend owns a company. He's just a Christian dude, like just praying, reading the Bible, and his friend does the same thing, owns a company. He says, yeah, God has been speaking to me about the third commandment, about Sabbath, and I have decided to give all of my employees 30 days off a year, because that's the tithe of the year, 365 days. Well, really, it should be 36 and a half days off, but 36 and like 3/4 day off, right? But he gives them 30 days off. And he's like, God has blessed me for that. Yeah, because working man is exploited. He doesn't have time. He doesn't have money. And that's what kills people. That's what causes all of our problems. So, you read it here in Ezekiel, right? I'll actually read the words of the Bible. But pardon me, sometimes I do have my own opinions. None of his sins which he hath committed shall be imputed to him. He hath done judgment and justice. He shall surely live. And the children of thy people have said, the way of the Lord is not equitable, whereas their own way is unjust. For when the just shall depart from his justice and commit iniquities, he shall die in them. And when the wicked shall depart from his wickedness and shall do judgments and justice, he shall live in them. And you say, the word of the Lord is not right. I will judge every one of you according to his ways, O house of Israel. And it came to pass in the 12th year of our captivity, in the 10th month, and the 5th day of the month, there came to me one that was fled from Jerusalem, saying, the city is laid waste. And the hand of the Lord had been upon me in the evening before he that was fled came. And he opened my mouth till he came to me in the morning. And my mouth being opened, I was silent no more. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, they that dwell in these ruinous places in the land of Israel speak, saying, Abraham was one, and he inherited the land, but we are many. The land is given us in possession. Therefore say to them, Thus saith the Lord God, you that eat with the blood, and lift up your eyes to your uncleanness is, and that shed blood, shall you possess the land by inheritance? You stood on your swords, you have committed abominations, and every one hath defiled his neighbor's wife. And shall you possess the land by inheritance? Say thou thus to them, which, by the way, divorce and remarriage. Say thou thus to them, Thus saith the Lord God, As I live, they that dwell in the ruinous places shall fall by the sword, and he that is in the field shall be given to the beast to be devoured, and they that are in holes and caves shall die of the pestilence. And I will make the land a wilderness and a desert, and the proud strength thereof shall fail, and the mountains of Israel shall be desolate, because there is none to pass by them. And they shall know that I am the Lord, and when I shall have made their land waste and desolate for all their abominations which they have committed. And thou, son of man, the children of thy people, which, by the way, that's very significant, because he keeps saying, when I punish you, you will know I am God. How? Because God is good. God is the virtues. So that's one of the biggest problems. It's, by the way, one of the biggest problems with abusing the working class and taking away all their rest, taking away their Sabbaths, because they can't even remember who God is. You see that in Egypt, when the Israelites leave Egypt, they can't tell God from a calf because they have no rest. They had no, the Egyptians didn't give them a Sabbath. They overworked them. It's one of the things that Pharaoh did in order to try to keep the birth rate down, is they overworked the working class. And that was one of the last things that called out to God for vengeance after God started doing his miracles. But when God punishes, you know who he is. Why? Because he punishes for the sins. And so you see, by contrast, who he is. He is the absence of all sin. He's goodness itself. And he's the virtues. And so these people think that they're going to be taken care of just because of their genealogy and whatnot and their relationship to the church, but they're not. They're going to be punished for their sins, and that's how you will know which God is the real God. So it's actually one of the ways you can know. It's the difference between Genesis and the other creation narratives. If you ever read them, you can tell the difference. You can naturally tell the difference between goodness and evil. It's not an exact science. You can be corrupted, but even atheists have a sense. Everyone has a sense for that. And just go ahead and read the pagan creation narratives and compare that to Genesis. They always say, well, this came from that, and this is similar to that. Well, the pagan ones are gross and immoral. The Genesis ones are not. They're pure. I mean, even when the immoralities happen, it's just a plain retelling of the truth. It doesn't make the immorality sound good. The pagan ones are just weird. They're weird, violent, meaningless. But the Genesis ones are very straightforward about the meaning of why these things happen. And now, why, the earth was flooded, for instance. And now, son of man, the children of thy people that talk of thee by the walls and in the doors of the houses, and speak one to another, each man to his neighbor, saying, Come and let us hear what is the word that cometh forth from the Lord. And they come to thee, as if a people were coming in. And my people sit before thee, and hear thy words, and do them not. For they turn them into a song of their mouth, and their heart goeth after their covetousness. And thou art to them as a musical song, which is sung with a sweet and agreeable voice, and they hear thy words, and do them not. And when that which was foretold shall come to pass, for behold, it is coming, then shall they know that a prophet hath been among them. Read the Imitation of Christ. But yeah, it's greed and covetousness. It's usury. My son, walk thou before me in truth, and ever seek me in simplicity of thy heart. He that walketh before me in truth shall be defended from the assaults of evil, and the truth shall set him free from seducers and from the slanders of unjust men. If the truth shall have made thee free, thou shalt be free indeed, and shalt not care for the vain words of men. O Lord, it is true. According as thou sayest so, I beseech thee, let it be with me. Let thy truth teach me, guard me, and preserve me safe to the end. Let it set me free from all evil affection and inordinate love, and I shall walk with thee in great liberty of heart. I will teach thee, saith the truth, those things which are right and pleasing in my sight. Reflect on thy sins with great displeasure and grief, and never esteem thyself to be anything because of any good works. In truth thou art a sinner. Thou art subject to and encumbered with many passions. Of thyself thou always tendest to nothing. Speedily art thou cast down, speedily overcome, speedily disordered, speedily dissolved. Thou hast nothing whereof thou canst glory, and many things for which thou oughtest to account thyself vile, for thou art much weaker than thou art able to comprehend. And therefore let nothing seem much unto thee whatsoever thou doest. Let nothing seem great, nothing precious and wonderful, nothing worthy of estimation, nothing high, nothing truly commendable and to be desired, but that alone which is eternal. Let the eternal truth be above all things pleasing to thee. Let thine own extreme unworthiness be always displeasing to thee. Fear nothing, blame nothing, flee nothing, so much as thy vices and sins, which are to be more unpleasing to thee than any losses whatsoever of earthly things. I am leaving Texas for this reason, and Texas has grown me in humility. I saw, I had years in Tennessee where I was full of prayer, didn't swear, didn't cuss, didn't play video games, all that kind of stuff, didn't have any trouble with lust, and came to Texas, encountered Mammon, demon of Mammon. He enslaved me and killed my son. And ever since then, it's been very difficult. So now is the time. God's releasing me from this war zone to go back to the mountains where I belong. I'm happy about that. Some walk not sincerely in my sight, but of curiosity and pride desire to know my secrets and to understand the high things of God, neglecting themselves in their own salvation. These oftentimes, when I resist them for their pride and curiosity, do fall into great temptations and sins. I have a lot of friends that have great reputations for holiness. Everyone knows they're holy because they pray a lot. And meanwhile, some of them won't talk to me anymore because, or my wife, because, you shouldn't be around negative people, as they say. And, well, that's the problem with pride, and particularly scrupulosity, is You have to be in control of your environment. And if you don't carefully watch every temptation, well, then you'll fall into sin because you're the one who decides if you sin or not. And God, in His grace, is forgotten. And so there is no humility. And so all those people that say, well, I can't be around negative people, I have to control my association. Or, well, every time I talk to you, you're just complaining and all this kind of stuff. Those are the same people that are coming up with all their own penances and don't accept the crosses that God gives to them. I talk to them about economics. I talk to them about jobs. And it's like, well, just get a job, blend in and whatnot. Get a mortgage. And, they're kind of at a plateau and they'll never probably advance. They'll just spin their wheels because God is giving a lot worse penances than that. But because they fear sin more than they love God or love their neighbor, especially their neighbor, because you can't. Charity is what causes temptation. The more you love your neighbor, the more temptation you're going to encounter. Yes, you should retreat regularly to protect yourself, but not. You should always be ready to interrupt your prayers because of love of neighbor. I had a woman tell me one time, I said, the problem I'm having is I wake up at 4 a.m. to pray, and then my son wakes up anyways very early and interrupts my prayer. And she said, that's from the devil. And I said, well, those are my children. I don't think that's from the devil. One of the things the church teaches is salvation comes through your daily duties. And that's where you can find the most merit. So, I am not impressed by these people that pray a lot, give up all their possessions, buy a camper, they're living homelessly and whatnot. Well, they bought the camper and they made it the way they wanted. And it's really, these people don't know what poverty really is. I mean, they have a very showy, visible poverty. I have lived real poverty. Real poverty is where you don't control what happens to you. That's real poverty. So, and by the way, your average man is much more poor than Jesus was because he's deeply in debt, because we live in a usury economy. Fear thou the judgments of God, and dread the wrath of the Almighty. Discuss not thou the works of the Most High, but search diligently thine own iniquities, and how great things thou hast offended, and how many good things thou hast neglected. Some have their devotion only in books, some in pictures, some in outward signs and figures. Some have me in their mouths, but little in their hearts. Others there are who, being illuminated in their understanding and purged in their affection, do always pant after eternal things, are unwilling to hear of the things of this world, and serve the necessities of nature with grief. And these perceive what the Spirit of truth speaketh in them. For he teacheth them to despise earthly, and to love heavenly things, to neglect the world, and to desire heaven all the day and all the night. That'll be good. I'm probably going to post this one on Substack, so I feel like I did a decent Bible study. You can follow me on Substack, Village Economy on Substack. I'm doing a lot of things. I'm building businesses so that I can employ people so that they can work for somebody who's not going to mistreat them, but is going to treat them very, very well, and with fair wages and time. I don't pay an hourly wage because I don't think it's fair. I want people to make as much money as they can without just losing on time all the time. And so that's one thing I'm doing. I'm also doing apologetics and debate. I've got a debate against the First Amendment. I'm going to debate against the First Amendment. I think the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, are basically a perversion of the 10 Commandments by Thomas Jefferson. So I'm opposing the First Amendment, and because people have more faith and devotion to the Constitution, and they mean the Bill of Rights because they don't even know what the Constitution says. The Constitution's a dumb bureaucratic document. It gives power, but it's not the Constitution people care about. It's the Bill of Rights, and which is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. So I have a debate against that near the end of this month. I was going to stream with a man, and I hope to stream with him about the generations, about the Zoomers and the Boomers, Groypers and this little corner of the internet, the Muslims and the Catholics, Boomers and Zoomers. That's the ultimate divide that we're dealing with right now. Is you have young unwedded men with energy, with virility, and you have old, tired, selfish, ignorant men. And those are the two groups that matter the most. And those are the two that need to come together. The wealth of the boomers needs to be united to the wisdom of the zoomers. That's what I'm working on. And what else we got? So you can donate to those sorts of activities by going to my Give Send Go link, which I probably won't remember to put into this, but usually you can find it on Substack and whatnot. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. I've got books and stuff. We're working on putting up the publishing website again. If some internet gambling company, the domain expired at one point when I was being abused by my local community trying to start a business, and by tech support. And so some internet company came in and grabbed the domain. So TaurusNuggers.com is now some gambling company. It redirects to them. But so I'm going to put it under villageeconomy.com. But go to villageeconomy.com. You can get in touch. That'll be good. God bless you all.